Speak to Zeidon Alkinani, who is a non-resident fellow at the Arab Center, Washington, D.C. He's here in Doha. He joins me now live. Thank you for your time. Why do you think Muqtada Sadr announced his resignation from politics? His supporters clearly saw it as a call to arms, but was that his intention?
Well, it's not the first time that Muqtada Sadr resigns from politics. For the past few months, if we go a few months back, when the early elections that was scheduled for October 2021 and that did take place, he did claim that he will boycott the elections and not participate in it. And during the process and during the time when other political leaders and religious leaders were trying to convince him to participate in those elections. And there are many claims that the elections were postponed from May till October just to push for his participation because the political class was concerned about the legitimacy of the voter turnout without the Sadrist participation. And during that very same period, Muqtada Sadr a movement and political committee was preparing and ended up developing a mobile app for Sadrist voters to find their candidates in their neighborhoods. So a resignation from politics is not necessarily something that we will consider to be a permanent decision from Muqtada Sadr. It is also not the first time that he claims that he will make sure that he freezes the operations of any association that is affiliated with his movement. And we can see this taking place for the past few hours. Saraya Salam, which is the armed wing of the Sadrist movement, is currently in clashes against other armed wings affiliated with the political parties within the coordination framework. However, there might be a speculation that is spreading that Muqtada Sadr's attempt to announce that he's politically resigning from Iraqi politics is an indirect attempt to escape accountability for whatever the Saraya Salam armed wing will be doing in the next few days. Now, Muqtada Sadr has been claiming that he's the representative of the people, a very common reform rhetoric that he has been developing across different stages of protest movements in Iraq, in post-2003 Iraq, despite being a veteran and a very significant member of that very same political class he claims to oppose. We must also not forget that he was representing protesters that did sit-ins and protests in the parliament. He represented protesters that were protesting against the Iraqi judiciary buildings and halls. At the moment, it will be a bit more difficult for him to claim that he is representing or giving directions and guidelines to the armed wing that is currently in armed confrontation with the previously mentioned armed wings within the coordination framework, because that drags him back to the previous personality in the early stages of the invasion, Zeidon, the armed personality.
Zeidon, the reaction from his supporters has been really strong. How dangerous a situation are we facing here? Could we see even Iraq descend into civil war?
Well, we are witnessing some signs of an armed conflict between the Sadrist movement and the coordination framework. However, this turning into an overarching civil war might be difficult because usually the terminology civil war is used when there is a nationwide conflict between various political groups claiming or representing their respective communities, or whether it be sectarian or ethnic or religious groups. In this case, this is a very political dispute. It's a very clear political rivalry. Although we claim to call it an intra-Shia rivalry, I prefer calling it an intra-Shia political elitist rivalry between the Sadrist movement and the coordination framework, fighting over who will be controlling the Shia part of the Muhassasa system, of the ethnic sectarian quota system in Iraq. It is a very similar political rivalry we are witnessing between the Kurdistan Democratic Party and the Patriotic Union of Kurdistan.
Where do you see this going? How can it be resolved?
Well, one of the many suggested solutions that many are hoping to see is the interference of Iraq's highest religious authority, Sayyid Ali Sistani. He has interfered in the past. He has intervened even in the early stages of the U.S. invasion to even end a dispute between the Sadrist movement and the U.S. occupational forces. However, the only thing to consider here is that the coordination framework has sent messages and asked for Sistani's interference to mediate a negotiation or a dialogue between the Sadrist movement and the coordination framework. However, Muqtada al-Sadr has rejected a dialogue with the coordination framework, claiming that he wants to re-establish a political system without the similar faces and figures and parties. And the silence from Sistani's office seems to be an indirect rejection to acknowledge or legitimize a continuous existence of the coordination framework.
Right, interesting stuff. Zeidon Alkinani, non-resident fellow at the Arab Center, Washington, D.C., speaking to us there from Doha. Thank you for your time.